Hi, everyone. My name is Kianna Durston, and I am the program lead at the Lake Winnipeg Indigenous Collective. I grew up between Winnipeg and Balsam Bay, which is on Lake Winnipeg, and my Métis family comes from St. Andrews and St. Peter's. They are the Ducharmes and the McDonalds before they were displaced during the making of Selkirk. So over the last few years with the Lake Winnipeg Indigenous Collective, part of my role has been developing Pinesiw Mashihkiy Totem, which is, like Alexis had said, the network of guardians around Lake Winnipeg. And I'm going to share about how we are strengthening stewardship around Lake Winnipeg by building this network that's rooted in ceremony, Indigenous knowledge, and collaborative science. So a little background on who we are. We are a growing network of First Nations around Lake Winnipeg that are working collaboratively to monitor, protect, restore, and advocate for the health of the Lake Winnipeg through an Indigenous lens. So we're not just a single project, but a relationship-based network where each nation leads its own work, and together we build strength through coordination and shared learning. This network formed organically, and it grew from conversations with the Lake Winnipeg Indigenous Collective. A lot of nations had identified shared concerns along the shoreline, including erosion, water levels, access, changes in medicines and fish, and there was also a lack of historic inclusion of Indigenous people at these conversations. So Indigenous nations have been stepping up and doing their own work, and we decided we needed to come together and do this rather than work in isolation, to move together forward. All together. So this is us at the fall gathering in 2024, I believe. Yeah. And that's a Tim, the dog. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. It's not, let's see if I move it. Here, let me just try something. Okay. I'll keep talking while we're here. We're currently made of First Nations around Lake Winnipeg from some Guardians on Lands programs around. Maybe I'll wait. Here, maybe if we press. So, it's not. We're duplicated, right? Press this maybe. No, like this. The one at the button right there. Yeah, no, that one. Yeah. No, I don't think it's. No? Something wrong. It's like stuck.
So it's not.
It's not. It's not switching. It's like stuck.
Oh, I see. So the screen is stuck.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Oh, I see. So we should be looking. I'm gonna pull out the HDMI. We're gonna see if it.
Okay.
Oh, wait, did I see something move? Okay, let me just check.
It's okay. How's everyone's day? Oh.
Okay, let's see. Okay, interesting. What would that be? Because when I pull this. Okay, let me check on it.
It's because it's mirrored. I don't know what's happened. Maybe take off the mirror and then do the mirror. Looks like it works. So just press power like that. No. It should be there. No.
Okay, I'm gonna close your presentation and open it again. No worries.
Okay, and now press that. Switch. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we're back. Okay, well, I won't start over, but we were here, so I'll this is where we're at. So we're currently made up of lands and guardians programs from the following nations around Lake Winnipeg. I recognize now the green might not be the best color but that's where we are. So we include lands and guardians programs from Mashihkiy Cree Nation, Poplar River, Saugeen, Broken Head, and Peguis First Nations. So those little stars are, if people don't know where those nations are, that is where everyone is located. So that's where a lot of our monitoring and restoration work happens. So a little bit about our name. In 2024, our network received its name in ceremony led by Rob Aptegen from Norway House Cree Nation. So as Alexis had said, Pinesiw Mashihkiy Totem translates to Thunderbird Medicine Clan in Cree. And our name speaks to our role as guardians, preparing the way for the Thunderbirds to return and renew the waters. Receiving a name in ceremony was important as it roots our work in spirit and not just strategy. The picture on the left was a painting that Jackie Travers from Lake St. Martin First Nation painted for us. When we explained a bit of our name and our story and the purpose of the work that we're doing, she created this beautiful image where you can kind of see the guardians that are in the wings. The mosquito at the center represents every guardian who's coming and returning to the water before the thunder, much like in the spring. So then we were able to pull that mosquito out and kind of create this emblem that all of our guardians are able to wear on their work. So I wanted to give a little background on what an Indigenous lands guardian is, because I don't know if everyone here knows, but it's important to emphasize that a land guardian is not a new role, but a historic community responsibility. A lands guardian is not only someone who collects data, but they are the eyes and the ears on the land. They can use scientific tools in their monitoring programs, but these tools support a deeper responsibility to their community. A large part of their role is relational. They are present on the land and the water regularly, so they are able to observe those subtle changes, shoreline shifts, plant health, access routes, and they are able to report these observations back to elders and knowledge carriers in their community. In doing so, they keep Indigenous knowledge systems active and informed. Guardians help translate what they see through both scientific measurement and lived observation into information that community can use to make decisions. And this is Owen Bear. You can see him. He's taking some water quality sampling on Poplar River. And he's one of the guardians that we work with. So as a network, we come together to support data and resource sharing across nations. We also provide technical support for monitoring and project management. We deliver field training. So in I think the top left and the middle, that was me last fall, doing some benthic kicknet sampling training with a lot of the guardians with some equipment thanks to ECCC. We also conduct joint shoreline erosion monitoring, which I'll talk a little bit in a couple slides from now. And we also implement restoration priorities and develop Indigenous knowledge indicators for shoreline health. So when developing the network, each nation was at different stages in their programs, and they were taking on different monitoring projects based on their local priorities. And you can kind of see that listed below, or in the chart. So Poplar River was doing work around algal bloom mapping. They were also doing water quality and bird surveys. Mashihkiy was doing moose monitoring, water quality monitoring, and bird surveys. And Saugeen was doing water quality monitoring and work related to the decommissioning of the nuclear plants in their territory. And Broken Head has recently started taking on some bison habitat restoration work with the new herd that they got a couple years ago. And Peguis has been doing work with archaeological studies and monitoring related to Section 35 consultations. So through the network that we were working on, what we wanted to do was create a space where all of these nations would be able to share the findings that they were finding across these different monitoring projects. What we also wanted to do was develop a joint monitoring project where we could have shared methods for data collection and analysis. So we wanted something that was accessible to everyone that was entering it, given the different capacity constraints and where each program was in the development. So we needed to find a monitoring method that had a low barrier to entry, minimal equipment and lab needs, and it needed to be a shared issue, and we needed to work complementary with Indigenous knowledge of shoreline health. So for this reason, we chose shoreline erosion monitoring. So shoreline erosion is a shared issue across Lake Winnipeg that is directly linked to water level regulation and hydro development, which is often impacting First Nations across Lake Winnipeg the most. It became clear through ongoing discussions that this was an area that the network wanted to put its focus on together. So we chose the low barrier method, including the traditional stake site erosion monitoring, and we chose this because it had minimal equipment needs, there was accessible training, and it was easily scalable across all the communities. And we needed a starting point for everyone to get on the same level of monitoring. And you can kind of see that's George McKay and Kenton Sangster from Mashihkiy when we were setting up a monitoring site at their culture camp. And on the far right is a list of just the equipment needs, so you can kind of see it's very accessible. We were able to create equipment bundles so that community members and anyone who wanted to start monitoring was able to. So since 2024, we've established 12 sites around Lake Winnipeg, and we're currently going into our second year of monitoring. So yeah, and those are some pictures you can kind of see. So the top two are in Seguin, and then the bottom two are in Mashihkiy. So when we were coming together to discuss developing this network, something that was really important was that we center our work in Indigenous knowledge systems and ceremony in our work. Monitoring alone doesn't tell the full story. So alongside the joint shoreline monitoring, we have been developing place-based Indigenous knowledge indicators for lake health. So through this process, our goal was to ensure that Indigenous knowledge is centered, distinct, and maintained, and not just incorporated into dominant Western science. Oftentimes, Indigenous knowledge is kind of cherry-picked, where it feels like it's needed in certain areas, but we wanted to make sure that we were centering it in our own way. So these indicators have been in development through ongoing annual interviews with elders and land users, and they reflect the cultural and historic relationships to water, and help us communicate together the overlapping indicators for shoreline health. So some key questions that we explored was, how is Indigenous knowledge used to predict weather patterns on the lake? How is Indigenous knowledge used to understand the health of the lake? And what are indicators of ecological balance on the land and shoreline that you see in your community? And how, if so, has this changed over the years? So here's just a little bit of a chart that we put together. I want to emphasize that Indigenous knowledge is it's a place-based knowledge system, so these do not reflect indicators for every Indigenous person, every nation around the lake. I just put some together for people to have a better understanding of what we're talking about. So muskrat abundance was an indicator that was highlighted in certain communities, and there were certain elders in the communities that highlighted that they would look to the muskrat to understand what the water levels were going to do, because they noted that muskrat would often leave prior to water levels rising, and they would only return once they'd balanced out. So that was an important indicator that we've been working with, as well as boat access. Fishers have been noting that they would look to whether or not they were able to access certain inlet rivers, which had been impacted either by sediment and erosion or low water levels. And medicine abundance along the shoreline was another indicator that certain communities highlighted, that there was a loss of certain medicines that took place when water levels increased, or eutrophic plants such as cattails became dominant in the region. So diving a little bit deeper, that muskrat may inform our understanding of water levels, but they're also deeply tied to our history and our relation to the land. They not only provide us with a food source, they also have cultural and relational significance. Muskrat is used as an indicator for water level stability, wetland integrity, but are also have a deep cultural meaning in there. So when muskrat populations decline, it also signals a broader imbalance and not just a species change. The absence of certain medicines along the shoreline signal prolonged high water levels, nutrient imbalance, sediment change. These are ecological indicators, but they are also cultural indicators. So when medicines disappear, so does community access to those medicines, and that has a broader impact. So centering these indicators allows us to better communicate more broadly what communities are experiencing on the land and how this interacts with not only the whole ecosystem, but the health of the people and their ability to live a good life. I'm not a designer, I'm not a graphic designer, but so I kind of put these together to kind of get a bigger picture of what we mean. So you can see that water levels in a community can be observed through shoreline erosion on the top, but it can also be observed through loss of wetlands and medicines from increased sedimentation, excess nutrients. It can also be observed through the loss of the muskrat, which also can be observed through the loss of access and impacts to access. If people aren't able to get on the land, they're not able to harvest, they're not able to get their medicines. All of these have impacts on community well-being and culture. So pairing traditional monitoring methods alongside these indicators allows us to get a bigger picture of shoreline health, but it also helps nations to take action in their own communities. This work has already begun in Seguin, where Guardians have initiated barn swallow habitat restoration sites in their communities, where they're working together to strengthen and restore the shoreline habitat in their territory. So this was us at some places where they've begun planting, and they've established this barn swallow condos, or they like to call it barn swallow hotels. This spring, we're working with some schools, and we're going to do some land-based work with land-based students there, and we're going to have some learning activities with the students where they can take part in the restoration work that we're doing. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Virtually. Sorry.
Some of your partners are measuring water quality. Is that done in partnership with the community-based monitoring? Are they handling the samples, or?
No, so they are all working in different aspects. So I believe Poplar River is working because they have a partner that they're working with their IPCA, Indigenous Protected Conserved Areas. Seguin is working with Treaty 3. So they're all kind of working in different projects based, but that is something that we've been kind of talking about of whether or not we can start working with LWF too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kianna.
I was also going to say, I think it's really inspiring to see 10 years with LWF and how far you've come. So I'm really excited to see where we'll be in 10 years.
We'll invite you back.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's another round of applause.